Focus on some of that breaking news I brought you early in the hour. The story that the British couple detained in Iran last week have now been charged with espionage. Craig and Lindsay Foreman were arrested in January, in fact, but news of their detention only emerged last week when state-run Iranian media reported they were being held on unspecified security charges. The couple, both aged 52, had been on a motorbike trip across the world and had planned to be in Iran only for 5 days. Let's speak to our news correspondent, Asghar Jahangir, who's following developments from Islamabad. Asghar, what do we know about the decision that's been made by the court?
Well, Christian, up until now, the family did not know what Lindsay and Craig Foreman were accused of. And it's important to flag that this announcement, in some ways, of espionage charges wasn't made directly by the judiciary. This was from a judiciary-run state media news agency. Now, Mizan news agency has said that Lindsay and Craig Foreman had allegedly entered under the pretense of tourism, but instead had allegedly collected intelligence for Western intelligence agencies. Now, this is not at all what has been said by their family. It's not at all what was said by Lindsay Foreman's own social media posts, because what is really notable about this case is that Lindsay and Craig Foreman had been documenting their journey in Iran almost every day. And what Lindsay Foreman had made very clear in her posts was that as a life coach, she was conducting a research project across the world about what it meant to live a, quote, good life. And she and Craig Foreman were making this trip on their motorbikes, hoping to get to Australia to present that research at a conference. Now, of course, news of their detention only emerged last week when Iranian state media released that image of the couple meeting the British ambassador with their faces blurred, and the family then agreed to have them named. But again, this is, of course, very distressing for the family. That's the word they used when they talked about this situation, and they're working with the Foreign Office and hoping they can get their loved ones home safe.
The UK travel advisory is pretty specific, Asghar. It warns travellers that they could be arrested just for having a British passport or connections to the UK. Were they aware of that warning, and had they discussed it?
Yes, they were, and they made that very clear. Even before they entered Iran, Lindsay Foreman had posted about the fact that they were defying the advice of their family, friends, and the FCDO travel advice, which, as you mentioned, says that it advises against all travel to Iran for British nationals. And if you look at what's happened in recent years, there have been dozens of arrests of British nationals as well as dual nationals in Iran, often under charges that are vague and security related. But what Lindsay Foreman said is that they were facing their fears. They hoped that the rewards would speak for themselves, and that they believed that there was a shared humanity that they could discover while they were in Iran. And if you look at their posts, that's often what they're talking about. They're talking about tasting the food, speaking to people, finding that people have more in common than they do apart. Her last post on social media was her meeting with a cleric in Iran with her hand over her heart, speaking about that shared humanity. And so, to your point, though, yes, they were aware of the risks, but they went in anyway.
Just very quickly, what happens now?
Well, it's unclear. All these cases of Western nationals who have been detained in Iran can vary, and that's one thing we should be really clear of, is that you can't quite group them all together. They're always of different circumstances, and they really vary in terms of the amount of time that these detainees spend in Iran. Of course, their family has known about this for weeks. They're hoping that this ordeal will end quickly. There was a case where an Italian journalist last year was released in under a year, in only a few months. But of course, then you have other cases, for example, that of Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, an Iranian dual national, British dual national, who spent 6 years in detention in Iran. But again, it's hard to connect all of these cases because of how much secrecy is involved in what goes on in Iran.